This is our daily study of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, the Mishnah, for those who have yard site for tonight, which is the 8th of Iyar. Sarah Cohen, Merle Galitsky, Edith Kaufman, Samuel Clevitt, Herman Lerner, and Morris Milder. May their memory be for a blessing. So as always, a link to the text of the Mishnah will be in the first comment below. We are in chapter 1 of Pirkei Avot, Mishnah number 15. We're learning the sayings of the great pair, Hillel and Shammai. So we just got through some of the sayings of Hillel, and now we get to Shammai. So poor Shammai, we never ruled like him. Hillel and Shammai always disagreed, and actually more accurately, it's Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Hillel and Shammai, the individuals, actually don't have so many disagreements in the Mishnah and the Talmud, but their yeshivas, their houses of study that they established, that they sort of followed the disagreements much more. Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, sort of became entire schools of thought. And we almost always, there's a handful of exceptions, we almost always rule according to Hillel or Beit Hillel, the house of Hillel, because Hillel was a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more tolerant. However, we always study and respect the opinions of Shammai. You know, you could spend an hour in yeshiva poring over the opinion of Shammai, even though we don't rule like him. It shows the great respect we have for his thought. And once again, Hillel was sort of seen as more user-friendly and tolerant for the average person. But Shammai, who is sometimes more of a hardliner, we think maybe he's right in the abstract, even though we're not going to impose that on people. We want to understand his thought. Okay, so we see here Shammai Omer, Aseh Torascha Keva, Emor Ma'at V'aseh Harbe, V'heve Mekabelos Kol Adam B'Sever Panim Yafos. So we're right, a lot of these lessons are in threes, makes them easy to remember. So Shammai says, make your Torah study a fixed habit. You know, if you want to really do this is true of anything, right? Like if you say, I'm going to work out eventually. Well, something that you say I'm going to do eventually is not going to happen. It's going to happen if you say every Monday morning at 9 a.m., that's my time to work out. If you have to put it on the schedule, so to speak, or things don't happen. So Becca and I are finding that in terms of, let's say, having a date night where we go out and get a babysitter and, you know, so let's go out one of these days, and then weeks go by and then you don't have one. So you have to sort of put it on the schedule to make it happen. Little things like that. And now there are no date nights because there's nowhere to go. But talking about pre-corona and hopefully post very soon too. Okay, so same thing with Torah. I always tell people, you know, if the only Torah you study all week is the 10-minute rabbi sermon, then at least make that a thing. You know, the Torah that I study on Shabbos morning at around 10:45 or so, I go to shul and I hear the rabbi sermon, and that's my 10 minutes of Torah study. Or if it's this video, right? Make this video your daily study of Torah. So build on that, but you have to put something, you have to make something a habit for something to happen. Okay, then such an important lesson. And more ma'at v'aseh harbe. Say little and do a lot. Man, if only that could really be spread far and wide in our day and age, where people talk really big on social media and everything, and Twitter. The whole point of Twitter is to talk. Here's what I think about everything, right? They're saying everyone's become an expert in infectious diseases. Everyone talks a lot, and you know that's fine. I mean, we have this miracle of social media where we could have these conversations virtually. Especially now, it's a nice way to connect where we can't see each other in person. But this is what I mean about Shammai, who is I guess, more conservative, if you will, and more guarded. But what an important lesson from his life. You know, speak little. That's sort of a very conservative or old-fashioned mindset, but do a lot. You know, you don't have to talk so much. And we're going to see a lot of lessons actually in Pirkei Avot, not just from Shammai, about how the rabbis say, be careful with your words, don't talk too much. Your actions speak louder than words is the English version of this. And the commentary of the Kahati quotes from the book of Genesis, when Abraham hosts the three men who he sees wandering in the desert. He doesn't yet know that they're three angels. And he says, what does he say to them? Come into my tent and I'll fetch you a morsel of bread. He speaks, he commits to a little, just a morsel of bread. But then he brings out this gigantic feast. So he spoke a little, but he did a lot. You know, as opposed to the opposite would be like, hey, come in my tent, I'll give you a big feast, and then you only give them a little bit of bread. You know, you don't want to talk big and do little. So we have to learn from the example of Abraham in terms of speaking humbly and then doing a lot. Okay, so the heavy makabalas kol adam b'sever panim yafos. This is so profound, coming from Shammai. Receive every person with a cheerful countenance. Receive every person with a smile. You know, don't look sour. I've said this too before. If you give a dollar, this came up a lot in New York City. There's homeless people on every corner. You give a dollar to a homeless person, it's such a greater act of kindness if you give it with a smile and say, "Have a nice day," as opposed to sometimes I see people walking by, they drop a quarter in the guy's cup and they don't even look at him. They do it with disgust. It's like, well, why are you doing an act of kindness or not? Just a small smile goes such a long way. And Becca taught me that even if you don't give money, it's say, "Oh, sorry," that's what Becca would do in New York. Not today, but have a good day. That's what she would say to a homeless person if she didn't want to give them money. So a smile sometimes goes a very long way. But like I said, coming from Shammai, who is known to be sort of stern, how fascinating is it that the very first thing we hear from him, in the first mission that we hear from him, he says, "Greet everyone with a cheerful countenance." That shows that Shammai is not quite as stern as his reputation. He was a nice guy also, right? It's an important lesson. Um, the famous story about Hillel and Shammai is someone came to convert to Judaism. First they came to Shammai and they said, "Tell me the whole Torah while standing on one foot. What's the Torah all about?" While standing on one foot is a way of saying, in a nutshell, tell it to me quick. And Shammai was so turned off by this question. What are you talking about? What do you want, a quick conversion here? He chased him out of the building with a ruler. Shammai held a measuring stick in his hand and chased the guy out of the building. That's Shammai. You know, um, don't come to me with silly questions. The guy came to Hillel and said, "Tell me the whole Torah while standing on one foot." And Hillel obliged him. He said, "You know what? The whole Torah is what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. The rest is commentary. Now go and learn." And then he proceeded to teach the guy and convert him. Classic example of Hillel being a little more user friendly, why we rule like him. But we have to learn from Shammai's actions too, right? It's actually important sometimes to set boundaries and not suffer fools, as they say, right? Shammai's attitude can be important also. Um, but despite the fact that Shammai didn't, so to speak, suffer fools, other than that, if someone wasn't acting in a way that he viewed as being disrespectful, which was his way of understanding this convert, Hillel understood that convert wasn't really trying to be disrespectful necessarily. But Shammai's neutral attitude was to greet everyone with a cheerful face, and that's very important. That sometimes you have rabbis or even politicians or people who you disagree with. One is conservative, one's liberal. Hopefully, in an ideal world, both of them are good people with good character. It's just they have different worldviews, and that's classic Hillel and Shammai, both great sages that we respect, but different worldviews. Okay, with that, we will say the memorial prayer. Since it's Erev Shabbos, we do not say the standard memorial prayer, we say the prayer following the study of Mishnah in Hebrew and then in English. And I'll just get the names of the yard sites for tonight, the 8th of the year. Ana Adonai Malay Rachamim, Asher B'yadcha Nefesh Kol Chai V'Ruach Kol Basar Ish Yiyenu L'Ratzon L'Fanecha Toraseinu Tfilaseinu Ba'avor Nishmos Kol HaAskaros Shel Halayla Ugmolna Imahem B'Chastecha Gadol Liftach Lahem Sharei Rachamim B'Chesed V'Sharei Gan Eden Uskabalosam Ba'avo V'Chibo Shlach Lahem Malachecha Akadoshim HaTahorim Lo Licham Lo Shivam Tachas Eitzachayim Eitzel Nishmos HaTzadikim HaTzidkanios Chasidim V'Chasidos Lehonos Miziv Shchinascha Lahaspia Mituvcha Tzafun LaTzadik. Please, O Hashem, full of mercy, for in your hand is the soul of all the living and the spirit of every human being. May you find favor in our Torah study and prayer. For the souls of Sarah Cohen, Meryl Galitsky, Edith Kaufman, Samuel Clevitt, Herman Lerner, and Morris Milder, in whose memory we study and pray. Accept them with love and affection, and send them your holy and pure angels to lead them to settle under the tree of life, near the souls of the righteous and devout men and women, to enjoy the radiance of your presence, to satiate them from your good that is concealed for the righteous. May their body repose in the grave with proper contentment, pleasure, gladness, and peace, as it is written, "Let him enter in peace, let them rest on their beds, everyone who has lived in his proper way." As it is written, "Let the devout exult in glory, let them sing joyously upon their beds." And as it is written, "If you lay down, you will not fear. When you lay down, your sleep will be sweet." Amen.